Right, welcome to the Healthy Workplaces vodcast or podcast. I'm not quite sure what to call it, but anyway,
Either or.
it's a conversation with an interesting guest who has something to say about the importance of health to the workforce and workplaces. And today I am delighted to welcome Rebecca Attle. Hello, Rebecca.
Thank you, Liz. Thank you very much.
It's great to
Delighted to
have
be
you.
here.
Oh, good. It's great to have you in conversation. And this particular topic that we're going to talk about today is something that I'm personally quite interested in. And I think it's got so much potential for further discussion. So today we're welcoming Rebecca, who is a nutritional therapist, and she runs a company called Empowered to Nourish Limited. And Rebecca, I wanted to ask you, first of all, what is a nutritional therapist?
That's a good question because there's lots of different sort of there's dietitians, there's nutritionists, there's nutritional therapists. I think from my perspective, a nutritional therapist is somebody that really looks at the sort of a holistic view of health. So we're not just simply looking at what people are eating, the diet. We're also looking at everything that sort of surrounds that. So having a good diet is great, but it won't do all the heavy lifting. If you're not getting good sleep, if you're totally stressed out, you can be eating the most amazing diet, but it's still not going to deliver the nutrients to your body because the stress will stop it from doing so. And if you're not sleeping, you're not repairing your body. So we look at that whole picture. So sleep, stress, diet, we're looking at molds and all manner of things that impact people's health that they don't necessarily know about or realize.
So that's really, gosh,
And
that's
and and
mind-boggling
life,
to start with.
yeah,
Yeah, there's
lifestyle
so much
issues
more
like
to it.
telephone use, so much more to it. Yeah.
Okay. And would you say that there are specific health conditions that a nutritionist, nutritional therapist can help tackle, or are the possibilities endless? If somebody's suffering
I
with any kind of
yeah,
condition, it can be
I think
relevant.
I think the possibilities are endless, but the degree to which we can help would change. So things like type 2 diabetes, people have proven that they can reverse their type 2 diabetes by eating the correct diet. There've been successes with lots of different illnesses, but I think it's the extent to which. And I think some illnesses you can tackle with sort of nutrition alone, but some it's going to require a hybrid approach with sort of traditional medicine, NHS type medicine, and alternative medicines working in conjunction. So things like cancer, most people will go down a more traditional route for very good reason, but that doesn't then stop them from also bringing in the sort of alternative therapies. And nutritional therapy is a really great one in that sort of
Mm.
example.
And why and how did you get interested in this field of uh, work?
Yeah. So to cut a very long story short, so I lived in France for a very long time during my sort of, well, most of my 20s really. And I used to sometimes have to go home from work. I used to have the most chronic stomach ache. And what I realized was that the croissants, the pain au chocolat, the baguette, the pasta, the French eat a lot of pasta, all of these foods that contain wheat were not serving me. And it was through trial and error that I realized that. And just sort of reading different books on nutrition was what really sparked my interest. I realized that I cut out the wheat and I deflated. I no longer had the stomach pains. And that was literally within a few days. So I just read a few more books and got fed up of doing what I was doing and then decided, why don't I retrain? And so I took a 3-year part-time diploma whilst working sort of full time. I'd moved back to England by then. Yeah, and retrained as a nutrition therapist.
That's so interesting. And it's interesting that you had that international perspective on
Yes.
diet as well, because you were living in a different culture. And I'm a big France fan myself. I holidayed there a
Yeah,
lot and I love the food there. But you're right, it's very wheat heavy, isn't it? And
it is wheat
that
heavy. Yeah.
yeah, that shift can sometimes upset I don't
Yeah.
know what
The gut, the gut.
the equilibrium, gut
Yeah,
health.
yeah,
And it's interesting
definitely.
that you got into this through self-help, which is often the way, isn't it? The
Yeah,
discovery that there is a different way can often
yeah,
come
a
not through
different path.
medical advice or the usual, sources of help, but
Yeah,
can come
no,
through
sure.
educating yourself. So
Yeah,
so today's theme, we're thinking about the importance of nutrition and lifestyle, this wider picture then, this holistic view to people's health and specifically in relation to work. So happy,
yeah,
healthy, productive workforces. Do you think there is a link, and can you kind of sort of talk me through what you think this has to do
yeah,
with productive workforces, happy
sure.
and healthy workforces?
Yeah, so I do remember when I came back from France, it was like I can probably count on one hand the number of days that I've not had a lunch break. There's no way I'm not having a lunch break. And I think working in France, we did have lunch breaks, and sometimes they were 2 hours long. And I'm not suggesting that that should be the norm, because that is a long time. But it's a big deal, sort of having that pause during the day to refuel. And when you understand that that's what it's for, it's to refuel and to give your body back the nutrients that it's spent doing the work. I think that's a really good way of looking at it. And when I moved back to the UK, yeah, people they either don't take a lunch break, or they take a lunch break, but they're taking their lunch break while they're still like doing their work, or maybe they're not doing their work, but they're just scrolling through
Yeah,
social media. They're
yeah,
looking at stuff still on the computer or on the phone, but they are sat at the
yeah.
desk. They're not sort of
Guilty
taking
as
that break
charged.
away.
It's
Yes.
exactly what I just did today.
and
Yeah.
that's fine on occasion, but I think it's when it's every single day we're doing that, it doesn't set you up for success from a sort of a nutritional perspective.
So, do you think there's something around the way in which we eat in the UK, as well as what we eat, that is making us
Yeah,
ill or creating health conditions that could be avoidable?
yeah. I think what we're eating is a lot of, and this is not just the UK, I think this is also sort of developed countries as a whole, is we're eating far too many sort of refined carbohydrates. We're eating far too many um, processed foods, but also ultra processed foods and ultra processed foods. And I think that's partly driven through the sort of junk food and all that sort of stuff. The microwave meals became really quite trendy in the sort of 1980s. The sort of fat-free diets and low sugar, all that sort of stuff,
Mm.
sort of birthed an industry of sort of, yeah,
Mm.
lots of processed food to avoid fat and to avoid sugar and all that sort of stuff. And I think what's then happening is that people are, because of the way people are choosing to eat at their desk, they are more prone to eating sandwiches that are very processed, unless they've made them at home. Of course, that's slightly different. But generally speaking, people are going out to Pret, they're going out to Costa, they're going out to the local, or even like the local convenience store to grab something that is going to be processed, so that they can eat it at their desk, and
Mm.
eat it, generally speaking, with one hand,
Yes.
and
Yes.
not sort of eating with a knife and fork, because sitting at your desk and eating a load of vegetables and meat and all that sort of good stuff is more tricky to eat at a desk, or write at a
Yes.
desk is going to leave your
Yes.
keyboard full of rubbish.
So I guess the emphasis is more on convenience, and lunch being something you just need to get done quickly rather than something to savor, something to a
Yeah, something
time
to
of, like you
enjoy.
say,
Yeah,
refreshment and
yeah.
refueling. And that's a cultural thing, I guess.
It
I
is a cultural thing, because it's not just
can't, yeah,
limited to lunch, is it, in this country? I
no.
think generally speaking, my children are young, but a lot of my friends have got sort of teenage children, and they're in so many clubs that dinner is in the car.
Yes, on the
What
move.
one
On
friend
the
even had
move.
a sausage in the car.
Yeah, yeah, and you're
On the
right.
move.
I suppose that the science around this probably shows that eating on the move is not good for your gut health and
No.
conditions like irritable bowel and inflammatory bowel disease are probably rooted in all sorts of bad habits, aren't they? So I guess what you're saying is it's about developing good habits for life, not just about in the work, what you do at work, but it's perhaps a wider conversation around how we approach food, how we value food and meal times.
The priority that we place, the priority that we place on it compared to the priority that we place on other things.
And I suppose, if we're talking about things like ultra processed and ultra processed foods, and I'm halfway through the great book about this by Chris Van Tulloch and Dr. Chris,
oh God,
which is really good, really horrifying reading.
You'll never sleep again.
No, but if we're talking about all of that, one of the things he says about ultra processed foods is that they're deliberately targeted at people who live in poverty, who can't afford, perhaps don't have the skills, access to it, information about healthy eating, and they certainly don't have the budgets to be cooking from scratch every meal, or possibly the time either. So the ultra processed food industry has a purpose to it, which is to keep selling more of the same,
to make profits. Absolutely.
So it's kind of like a catch-22 situation for people.
Yeah.
So I wanted to move on and ask you then how you think diet and lifestyle choices, probably choices that people make both in the short term but with a view to the longer term, can influence their performance at work and generally in life. We don't have to limit this conversation to what's happening in the workplace.
Sure. I think when you're looking at so talking about the refueling from food, food is about, it's not the food itself, it's not the choice of the food, it's the messages that food is then sending to the body, for the body to do different things. And we have lots of enzymes in the body that require certain nutrients to perform. If they don't have those nutrients in certain quantities, those enzymes can't perform. Same with hormones. It's all of it sort of dictated by the food, the nutrients within the food that we eat. And if, let's take the example of sort of feeling energized, feeling like we can concentrate, we all know that when we've had our lunch, we feel that about 3 o'clock, around a dip, and depending on what type of lunch you've had, that dip is either like going further down or not. And same in the morning, people are on what we call like a sugar roller coaster, because what we have with these processed foods, and I don't want to keep demonizing processed foods, is when we're eating a piece of cake, we know that we're having a treat. What we don't know when we're eating bread or processed crackers or whatever is they are full of sugar. We just don't know that, and that's normal. We don't know that because we're not meant to be reading all the nutrition labels of everything that we buy. That's just not practical. But because there is so much sugar around us, it really affects our energy levels. It means that we're on this sugar roller coaster. So when we feel a dip, what do we crave? We crave more carbs. So then we eat more sort of carbified things, and then we go up again and we feel great, and then we crash again. And this starts from childhood. This is not something that we start as adults. This starts from childhood. I see it with my own children, snacking. I can't fill them up. They're just to eat. Snack. It's sort of we are a snacking culture. A lot of people say, "Oh, I'm a bit of a grazer." And I think grazing is fine if you've got like a condition, sort of diabetes, where you do need to be very mindful of your blood sugar levels. But generally speaking, if we're eating a really balanced meal, breakfast is also a meal. A lot of people would start their day with a sugary breakfast, but if you can think of breakfast as a meal, like a lunch or a dinner, and eat the stuff that you'd eat at lunch and dinner for your breakfast, then you are less likely to feel these crashes throughout the day. If you're having like a savory breakfast, you're less likely to have crashes throughout the day. So those crashes mean that if you're not having the crashes, you're more focused, you've got more energy, you've got more sort of concentration, and that has got to increase productivity within the workplace. That's just seems fairly obvious. And it's not just productivity, it's if you're eating in that sort of healthy way, you're not going to be having as many sick days off. Do you know what I mean? It all feeds into the same sort of thing. And if as an enterprise you can and we'll probably get onto that in more detail in a minute, but if as an enterprise you're encouraging your workers to eat in a healthy way, then that's also great for staff retention. You know, a happy, healthy workforce means that people want to work for the firm and they keep wanting to work for the firm. So it's just a bit of a win-win, really.
I suppose the name that's coming to mind as you've been describing this, it's a great idea, isn't it, to have, you know, encouraging your workforce to eat healthily, good habits, good eating times, and you know, cut out all the or a lot of the sugary snacks, you know, cakes in the workplace, pastries. But the name that comes to mind is Jamie Oliver, who tried to do this in schools and almost became a public enemy number one for kids and parents, because you know we don't like being told to do things healthily. We don't like being told what to do, and we don't like being told to eat, you know, what a lot of people consider boring, for you know, rabbit food.
And that's what's such a shame, isn't it? I mean, Jamie Oliver, bless him. I mean, I look at what my kids get given at school, and I'm very much about balance. You know, I don't worry too much about what they get given at school. I'm certainly not going to be writing into the school and saying this is a disgrace, blah blah blah, because I know what I give them at home. But it's simple things. It's like why would you be giving them juices, orange and a glass of apple juice or orange juice in the morning when they could just have water?
Yes.
Or milk. They get offered milk, and that's the same in the workplace. I've worked for big enterprises that you think it's great when you're sort of in your 20s and the fridges are stocked full of Coke or Diet Coke or this or that. But the reality is, Coke's not good for you. Diet Coke's probably even worse for you because of the sort of fake sugars, artificial sweeteners. But we, as a nation, and all of the developed nations, from when you're babies, food is used as a reward. It's used to get you to do, like, it's used as manipulation, which I use it myself, to get them to do, to get them to do stuff. And that's where we sort of go wrong. But we can only do what's within our control now, can't we? So there are sort of quite simple things, I think, that workplaces can implement. And I think that's going to depend, of course, on the size of the firm, on the budget, but there's things that don't cost anything.
Let's get into that then. What do you think?
Okay.
So I'm a small business. I am a small business. So, you know, we're a small law firm and we have less than 10 employees. So there's a limit to what, you know, we can do with our budget.
Sure.
But what could a small employer do to get its employees thinking about nutrition and lifestyle? Give us some quick wins for smaller businesses.
So I mean, I think some of it starts with education, like educating the top levels of management that food and diet does make a difference to people's health, and that can just be simply encouraging people to do what you've done. Listen to sort of Tim Spector from the Zoe Project. I assume you're familiar with his work.
I am.
Read the book of like Dr. Chris Van Tullochen, Dr. Rangan Chatterjee. He's another great person, and these podcasts are all available, or they're on YouTube and stuff. And just listening to a few episodes of those make you realize, this is powerful stuff, not just the diet stuff, but like the lifestyle stuff and the sleep and the stress. And so just educating. If companies have got more budget, then maybe that's inviting a nutritional therapist or a nutritionist into the workplace to do some workshops, to do some talks on nutrition and the importance. That can extend to mini, like, one-on-one consultations. So I see clients, but you can go into enterprise and see you maybe do like 20 minutes with each person, you know. And that's something that individuals themselves can't necessarily afford and pay for. But if that was to be done even just once a year by the company, that could help. So that's the education piece. And then practically speaking, providing facilities. I mean, that sounds simple, but providing facilities so that people can bring their own food, be able to heat it up. So definitely a microwave. Definitely, like, and I'm sure some of this is law anyway, to have a kettle and to have a sieve. Let's say you
Mm.
wanted to just drain something, or you wanted to wash some salads or anything, just having like
Yeah.
sieves and
Sorry.
just basic sort of
Yeah.
equipment, knives, clean tea towels, a fridge, a freezer, things, and a place where people can congregate to eat. Because a lot of the time, the space where somebody's got, they might have a kitchen, but there's nowhere, there's no room, there's nowhere that people can come to share a meal together.
These are brilliant. Just getting the basics right is so important, isn't
Getting the
it? Getting the
basics
basics
right.
right. Yeah.
Things like, if you are sort of bringing in, like providing breakfast to sort of, or the you know, like people bring in stuff for their birthdays, don't they? But maybe encouraging people to bring healthy stuff in. But
Yes.
the company leading with that, showing the example. So if there is like a morning breakfast that the company's paying for, well, rather than it being like pastries and all that sort of stuff, maybe it is yogurt, maybe there are some nuts, maybe there are some fruit. I'm not saying cut out like having toast and stuff, but provide variety. I think providing variety, because a lot, what you got to realize, a lot of people nowadays are ill and they've got to follow specific diets. A lot of people can't eat gluten, a lot of people are dairy intolerant. So providing variety so people can join in.
And even different things for people to try that may not have thought about eating for lunch or for breakfast.
Sure. I think, I mean, there's like research that suggests that 56% of workers are not taking their full allotted time for lunch, but it's, they don't necessarily feel discouraged from doing that, but maybe they're not seeing their managers doing that. So if you're seeing your manager eating at the desk, you automatically feel like, oh God, what does he think to me sitting and eating lunch? Whereas if the managers are sitting eating lunch, it shows from the get-go that this is the norm, this is how we do things here. So modeling in the same way that you model to your children at home how to eat well and properly, modeling to the workforce that this is normal. And that, if we start to think out of the box, things like not sending emails out during lunch break, so people don't feel like they've got to be sat there, or something's just, let's say somebody gets something at like 12:15 when they're about to go on lunch at 12:30, then they feel like they've got to be sat there doing that. Whereas if there's like, we don't send out any emails between this hour and this hour, and that's easy done nowadays, isn't it? You can schedule your emails to go, or you can prepare an email and send it after lunch, and just cultivating that workforce that's just a bit more relaxed. Because a lot of the long-term illness, 64%, is it 64%? Let me just get my figures right here. 63% of long-term absence is due to sort of mental ill health, you know. And a lot of that is driven through burnout and feeling like they've got to be present all the time. A lot of people are even working through illness, like turning up being ill, but feeling like they've got no other options and no other choice.
And often that's about pay, isn't it? If you know, if somebody's
it
not
will
going to
be
get paid, they're only going to get statutory
people
sick pay.
Not
they're
going
going
to
feel under
pay.
pressure to get back to work
For sure,
and work through their illness. So there's lots of things that can be done that aren't rocket science. And you know, it's a menu, isn't it? Employers don't have to do all of them, but sometimes, you know, thinking about our recently beloved Michael Mosley, you know, he's very sad what happened to him, but his mantra of just one thing, I think, is something to take forward. And you know, what a great legacy. But just one thing, if employers were just to do one thing to try and make this more of a priority in their workplaces, then maybe things would start to unlock a little bit. I see your poster behind you, which is so visually attractive, with the pictures, and all the names of. Is that French? Yes.
Yes.
Wow,
so
wow,
when I
that's
first
lovely.
started doing my nutrition diploma, my husband bought me this. It says, "Qu'est-ce qu'on croque ce mois-ci?" What are we eating this month? So it's about seasonal eating for the different months. Wonderful. With veg. It's all in French. So
there's another conversation to be had there, isn't there, about eating foods that are seasonally available, rather than strawberries all the way through January through to December, for example. The things that we can grow seasonally in the UK are the things we should be eating because
Yeah.
they're naturally good during those times of
And
the
the
year.
and the supermarkets are quite good for that. If you go to sort of Aldi
Mm,
and Lidl and Tesco and whatnot, they have the British flag on the
yeah,
packaging of the veg that's in season
in
now. So
season, yeah. So
that
learning
makes
to
it
love
easier for
cabbage in the
people.
autumn is a priority. But I wanted to just end with asking you how you think, whether you think this is something that should be more of a priority right from childhood, really. So should this be more, should it be on the curriculum in schools, for
Yeah,
example? Should kids be
absolutely.
learning about their nutritional health from an early age?
Absolutely. They need to be learning that food is medicine, is what they need to be learning to a certain extent. And I think it should definitely be on the curriculum. The number of sort of illnesses that are so much more prevalent nowadays that could be sort like, I deal with acne and skin conditions, and a lot of that is, if teenagers knew that what they're putting in their mouths is what's actually reflecting on their skin, and it's not as simple as that, but it's from a gut health perspective. What's going on in the inside is reflected on the outside. And if they knew that, I speak to lots of women that have got acne still, and they're like, God, I wish somebody had have said to me when I was in my teenage years that if you stopped eating this and pouring milk on your Oreos and putting them in the microwave because some influencer on TikTok says that that's a great idea, then
Yeah,
do you know what I mean?
yeah.
I think it should be taught, and there's no reason why it needs to be taught in a really boring way. And I mean, I don't know what they do in terms of home education, like home. I can't even remember what it was called when I was at school. But yeah,
Oh,
like
like
cooking
home
classes,
economics.
home economics. That's it, not home. Yeah, home economics.
Yes.
Yeah, just having more cooking classes. Why would it
Yeah.
just be like a short period of time that you do that? Why is that not something that we're teaching our children to do constantly so they can
Yes,
look after themselves?
that is something that's been squeezed out of curriculums, isn't it, to make way for the all important, core subjects that
Yeah,
our
yeah,
government considers are really important to keeping our economy driven forward. But yeah, these other skills are so important too.
yeah, because we
Um,
can't drive the economy if we're all ill.
Absolutely right. Yeah. So, Rebecca, we're coming to the end of our time together, and I feel like there's so much more to talk about. So, I'd love to have you back another time. We can delve into some of these
Yeah, no
issues more
worries.
deeply. But just one last question for you before you go. What's on the menu tonight? What are you going to be cooking for dinner?
Well, it's funny. I've not done a menu plan. I am a big believer in planning. I did say to my husband, "Are we going to go out tonight?" Probably salmon. I've got salmon in the fridge. We literally
Oh,
picked up the click and collect this morning, so I've got salmon in
yeah,
the fridge. So probably salmon with
yeah.
rice with a load of veg. Buy an
Mm,
electric. Like, my biggest
perfect.
advice is savoury breakfast.
Yeah.
Sets you up so well, and an electric steamer to just steam a
Oh,
load of veg. Just
and an
steam it.
and an air fryer
I do have an air
to cook
fryer.
salmon.
I
But
have
these
lots of
These
devices.
tools are making the cooking so much easier, aren't they? So that and
Sure,
quicker for
quicker,
people who are busy.
quicker,
So
and
more
yeah,
economical.
enabling people to be a bit more imaginative as well with what they
Absolutely.
can do.
So I'm
Sure.
going to finish by saying bon appetit.
Merci.
Enjoy. It's been a pleasure talking to you this afternoon. I'm sorry that we had some technical issues at the start, which clipped our time a little bit. But I'm glad that we managed to get going.
No,
And it's been
that's
a
absolutely
really
fine.
insightful conversation. Thank you.